Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LinkedIn Literacy. Shelley, great to have you. And I'm just having more and more fun with these live shows. And I know we have another exciting lineup and topics up for discussion today. How you doing?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Fantastic. Listen, we had some crappy weather the last 48 hours. I tell you, we had snow, we had freezing rain, we had torrential downpours,
Ooh,
and a temperature swing of maybe 40, 50 degrees. So we went from winter, like, to like a balmy 60, 60 ish,
wow. That's some
all
serious
overnight.
stuff there. Yeah.
That was, yeah, some serious whiplash. But hey, that's sometimes life serves us similar dishes, where you're up and down and you're all over the place. You just got to learn how to acclimate, right?
Right. Yeah.
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 Listen, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about my favorite part of LinkedIn, writing.
Yeah, I know. But before we do that, posting, yes, I can't wait to just dive into this conversation. Before I do that, I want to make sure that we have everyone. Yeah, we are live. This is great. I can now see myself here on the LinkedIn platform. We are also multi-streaming on YouTube today, so I'm excited to be able to have this uploaded automatically. It's been uploaded in the past, but now that I'm multi-streaming it live, it's just a matter of adding it to the LinkedIn literacy playlist. So for those who are on joining us on Team Live, we're excited to have you here. Those who are joining Team Replay, you can now find us on YouTube as well as LinkedIn. So let's do our introductions. Why don't we start off with uh, Shelley? And why don't you tell us who you are and what you're doing in the LinkedIn community? I know it, some of our listeners know it, but those who are joining us for the first time, who is Shelley, community that she's serving, and the value that she's bringing? Let's hear it.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, Americo. Again, my name is Shelley Spence, and my thing is LinkedIn coaching. So I know what it was like when I first became active on the platform and how overwhelming it was. And so I'm having a very good time boiling it down and helping to coach people into making it work for them. Right. So, I help entrepreneurs, founders, and executives as well. And what I'm doing with them is helping them with the very things we talked about here on LinkedIn literacy, right? Optimal posting schedules, content strategies, how to get their profile in an optimized manner, those kinds of things.
Fantastic. So we got John sitting backstage who's anxious to join us. But John, I just dropped you a message on the private chat. We'll be bringing listeners up once we're done with our content and our conversation. Uh, Give us a minute. You're welcome to stay backstage and listen, or you can drop back into the audience and jump back in once we're ready to bring people up. So thank you very much for joining. Myself, hey, my name's Americo, and I'm a customer experience and personal brand strategist. I I help businesses and professionals refine their customer journeys, refine the relationships they have with their customers, so that they can quote more, sell more, and retain more clients. Very often, customer experience is considered or thought to be just a customer service type of accountability. It's the furthest thing from the truth. How you show up from, there's just so much I can fill in terms of what goes into customer experience. But in a nutshell, it touches every interaction the customer has with you, your personal brand, the business, and the services that you offer. So, if you're struggling getting customers in the door, if you're struggling onboarding and servicing those customers, or if you're struggling keeping them as customers, listen, reach out, and I'd be happy to have a chat. All right, enough about America. Why don't we jump into uh, the one thing we were anxiously waiting to talk about today? Posting. You and I, we have different rhythms, we have different formats and different approaches, all based on similar, if not the same, best practices. And this is what I love about LinkedIn literacy. We got two people having a conversation and talking about what works for them. But most importantly, it's okay to try different things and different approaches. Your thoughts and the value that you bring are tremendous to your community. And I can apply similar attributes, similar uh, touches and recommendations and best practices. And I might not get the same results, but that's okay. I replied earlier on one of your posts. Today's post completely flatlined, and that's okay. Right? The point here that we're trying to make is don't be discouraged. There are going to be occasions where we follow best practices, and we're just not going to see the results. But it doesn't mean that we've failed. It could be a time to pivot. It could just be your audience is shifting and evolving. Perhaps they're not showing up at the same time they once used to. Life happens. Things get in the way. Not everyone's going to be sitting waiting for Americo to post at 8 a.m. Eastern time because they got to be somewhere else. So, and let's just jump into it. I know we have some great slides that will help our audience appreciate and as well help us articulate the importance of them and the message that we're trying to portray. I'm going to try to change the slide here, fill it all up, try to keep the chat going. All right, that's going to cover a little bit of it. But nonetheless, why don't we kick this off with the different types of posts that users on LinkedIn can utilize. I know that I've tried every variation. Some work better for me than others. But why don't we start off? I know text-based posts are where you shine because you just have a knack for articulating and getting people going and people engaging, which is a vital piece.
Well, did I lose you? Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, so what was the last thing you said? Forgive me. It was breaking up.
So I was pumping your tires and telling you how great your text posts act and react. You have a knack for getting people fired up and engaging. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you share your experiences on what it is that you do and what are the best practices that you can share for anyone struggling to gain that traction when it comes to the text only posts.
I appreciate that. So thank you for your kind words. And now, and my text onlys, they're always accompanied by some kind of visual, like you mentioned there. So what has worked for me, and I have experienced higher rates of growth, inbound connection requests, more followers, as I've been working very hard on my writing. So I have developed a 9-element framework, and you can call it like a checklist or, however you want to describe it, but they're best practices that I try to implement for every post. Now, we don't have enough time to go over everything and also go through those 9 elements, but to give you an idea, so I make sure my hook is solid. I want to make sure that, I'm grabbing people's attention, right? And then I want to make sure it is optimized properly. So people have to, so when I have my rehook, right, which is where I sparked or where I've hooked them with a hook, and then the rehook sparks their curiosity and pulls them in, right? And I make sure that's properly formatted. And then of course you have your body. And then also some other things that are important. You want to make sure that you show your authority, right? Whatever you're, if you're trying to sell something, if you're an entrepreneur or you're an executive wanting to showcase your expertise, you want to make sure that every single post has some kind of element of you in there where you are showcasing your authority, right? So when I was writing mortgage operational posts, I would mention my mortgage executive experience, right? And now that I'm doing LinkedIn coaching, I mention an element of that, because you want to make sure that you show up in the post. You also want to evoke emotion, right? You want to use psychology. And my favorite one is FOMO, fear of missing out. I want people to read my posts and think, oh my gosh, this woman has something, I got to have it, right? So, I want to make sure there's that element of psychology in there. I also want to make sure that when I close, so we already talked about the hook and the rehook. Now I'm going to skip the body and go down to the close. I want to make sure my close fulfills the promise of my hook and my rehook, right? So in other words, if I cut the entire post out except for my hook, my rehook, and my close, it all makes sense, right? It's in other words, everything in the middle supported the beginning and the end. And then, of course, finally, you want to have your call to action, and make sure that your closing is what I call a Tada moment. Picture a gymnast that is doing her flips at the Olympics, and then at the very end, she's like, Tada! And then I want my closing statement to mirror that same effect. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. I want to go back to that hook and rehook, because I'll be honest with you, this is where I struggle. I get the hooks, but do you find that asking a question at your hook or just making a statement, what works best? What can we share with our listeners when it comes to that hook and that rehook? What do you find works better for you?
So what I've been implementing recently is trying to respond to an objection. So if my ICP is reading my hook, right, then I would like my rehook to respond to whatever objection that my ICP would have to my hook. So a good example for that today was my post today, right? So, I'm tapping into my ICP's brain, because, we're all wanting to grow. My ICP is, they're wanting to grow their LinkedIn presence. They're wanting to get better at it. And so the first thing I did was try to tune into that pain we feel when impressions are down. So I opened it with, wonder why that great post tanked. And a lot of people, the first thing they're going to think is, oh, my post tanked because algorithm sucks right now, right? But then I oppose that. I provide an objective or an objection to that thought and say, nope, it's not just because the algo's mean, right? And then I go into explain tangible tips that people can implement to optimize their treatment, the algorithm's treatment of their content in the feed, right? And so that's one way, providing an objection to their thought. Number two, I do a lot of questions, and then number three is just making a statement, right? But the one element that I always picture for myself, so my hook hooks the reader, and then I want to set my hook just like a fisherman, right? I don't know if you fish, if you're an angler, Americo, but my dad was a big fisherman, and I grew up around people that did a lot of it. And I remember very distinctly, they hook the fish, and then they would yank the rod, and they'd want to set that hook. And I look at my rehook as setting that hook.
Awesome. All right. Our friend Annie Osung has joined us. I'm looking at LinkedIn. There are some people who are currently live. I don't see anyone in the chat, so feel free, please drop in a comment. Let us know where you're joining us from. If you have questions that you'd like Shelley and I to answer, by all means, ask those, and we'll answer them in real time. And shortly, we'll be bringing people on stage for those who want to join us. Quick plug for our friend Annie. If any of you are creators here on LinkedIn and are envisioning that one day you want your words of wisdom published, Annie's the guy. You got to reach out to Annie. He will help you publish your piece of literature. All right. Now, before we move on to the next one, back text only. Spacing. How important is spacing versus just jumbling everything up and trying to compress it?
Spacing is incredibly important, because number one, most people over, I want to say 60-70%, are reading our content on their smartphones. And so if everything is just in a jumbled block of text, right? They're not going to read it. They're going to scroll on. And so, so I think, breaking up the text is very important. You want your sentences to be, choppy and to the point. You want to make sure that your hook is not more than 46 characters. You want to skip the second line. Make sure the rehook is no more than 46 characters. Otherwise, it's going to be buried, right? Because again, we're wanting to catch their attention with a hook and set their attention with the rehook. And if you don't optimize that all properly by keeping lines 1 and 3 under 46 spaces and keeping line 2 blank, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that.
Excellent. That's a great tip. A lot of people, and I was one of those people for the longest time, try to keep it as short and compressed, because I thought that the more I stretched out my content, the less likely people were to read it from top to bottom. But just naturally, our eyes will gravitate to smaller bite-sized pieces of content and sentences, opposed to trying to decode a paragraph and trying to make sense out of it.
Exactly. And the thing that we should be thinking of, it's paramount. Number one is clarity. I would rather write with clarity than be clever, right? Although I love being witty, right? But clarity is of paramount importance, and also readability, right? And so if you ever doubt, how your post would look, number one, I recommend the app Authored Up. It really helps me make sure that my content is readable on a mobile device. And if you don't want to do that, you can just go ahead and not post your post, but put it up in a schedule. Although I don't recommend scheduling anymore, but you can schedule it and then look on your device and see how it looks. And then then you know what to correct and redo, and then just delete it and post it when you're ready.
Gotcha. So just keep it in draft and have it go live whenever you're ready.
Yes.
That's a great approach. I'm still on the scheduling bandwagon, and maybe that's why I'm getting less eyes on it.
I disagreed with a lot of the gurus saying don't use the scheduler, use the scheduler, and I would think that's just ridiculous. As long as I'm here to support my post for the hour after, why not? But I haven't used it in months, and my impressions are higher. So I think there is something to that. So I don't use it anymore.
All right, I'm going to test that out. All right, so we have Dwayne and Bud who have joined us. Bud is happy to be here, and Dwayne is joining us from New Jersey. Thank you, gentlemen. Great to have you here. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in. All right, let's move on to image posts. I know that I've played and toyed around with the whole memes and the stats and quotes. I now, if I'm going to use an image post, I typically stick to stats that are related to my subject matter, which I speak about. So it's either personal brand refinement or customer journey refinement. Try to stay away from all those motivational memes and posts, which have value, but it just doesn't align with myself and my value proposition.
So now I differentiate. To me, a text only post is only text with no image, but I know what you're getting at. But I've never ever posted a single image post with no supporting text. Right now, right now, for example, with video, text is less important because, again, for people watching it on their smartphone, videos now are very similar to how they present on TikTok, right? So if you're scrolling through a feed, you're gonna see a video and you're not gonna see the text. So you don't need a lot of text, right? However, at least for me, when I scroll the feed on my laptop, which I do a lot of the time, it does show the text. So in my mind, I don't want to leave that blank right now, right? So I do post memes, and you're familiar with my goofy memes, making fun of myself in LinkedIn. But again, I always have at least a little bit of text supporting that, right? And so I'm careful to make sure that I am supporting my audience that prefers reading, people like me, but also people that prefer the visuals.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your memes and what you've created. Your cartoon image. You're
Thank you.
referring to.
I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, that and you should be. That gives that's your character. That's your persona in a cartoon emulation of who you are, and it speaks to your personality. And I know yesterday you brought a little bit of sass, which I really loved. It was classy, but still sassy. So
Thank you.
it's
Yes.
I'm starting to see you bloom, and you're doing a fantastic job. You're trying different things, and it's resonating with the audience. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's really about finding what works for you.
I
And
appreciate that. And the cool thing is, as I'm experimenting, I'm learning what works, right? And so, and I can extrapolate that and boil it down and present it in my training, right? Which is actually for me the most exciting part, helping other people.
awesome. All right, we have a couple of people who are backstage. I know John's sitting patiently in North Carolina, wanting to join us on stage. We also have Laura, who says hiding backstage with John. Now, Laura, I don't see you backstage. Oh, there you were. All right, we're going to bring some people up just to join the conversation. All right. So, who do we have? Do we have John? Who's initial S? There he is. John, welcome. Thank
Oh, I can't see myself on the screen. I don't know. Can you hear me?
it's we can hear you.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah.
Thanks for joining ever so patiently. For those of you who don't know John, John and I met at one of these live streaming events. Uh, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and ask your question if you have any?
Okay. Well, I am a software developer. I've been developing since the mid 80s when I was working on a Commodore 64 that belonged to my brother while he wasn't there. And I went through the military with electronics, doing electronics in computers. And then I started working in software, purely in software, because it's cheaper. Also stayed away from Microsoft for the same reason. And I've got a lot of experience in a lot of different languages, from working on chips, working embedded, to working on satellites on aircraft, full stack in the middle, going on the cloud, and now pushing into AI. Just started this year because I had not gotten any exposure to AI. Just started hammering in my way into it, learning how to use it with the lack of trust, and trying to help others to see that a lack of trust is critical and necessary. So
All right.
that's
Do,
about
do
it.
you do you have any questions or comments regarding what we've covered so far in terms of LinkedIn post types?
I don't. I'm not a accomplished poster. I'm definitely not a poster child. The only thing I know is, keep it to 35 words or less and less than 3 bullet points at a time. And I'm not used to posting, so that's all new for me.
All right. Well, uh, I know you and I have a conversation, and if anyone, including John, if being seen, heard, and remembered is something you aspire to do here on LinkedIn, so that you grow and nurture your audience, so whether it's for professional or career development, we'd be more than happy to have conversations to help you improve your visibility and gain more authority here on LinkedIn. We have Laura. I sent you the link. It says you're hanging backstage. I still don't see you, so feel free to try the link again, and be happy to bring you up. John,
Hey,
I'm just going to.
you have posts on the screen. I don't think the videos are shown because of the post-its.
Okay, let's turn this off here. All right, we're going to continue here. Um, Keeping on with the theme, and I know we're 25 minutes into it, and I have a couple of more slides we want to get into. So we're going to try to accelerate this. Multi-image posts, probably best known as the carousel or just multi-image posts, just as it describes. The carousels, I'm trying carousels once again. I tried them in the past. They were hit and miss. But that probably had more to do with the quality of my content more than anything else. This last week, I tried a different variation and got better results and more uptake on what I was sharing. Shelley, I know you've done carousels, and I know you've recently done multi-image posts. What can you share? Are there any best practices that you're currently using that our audience can benefit from?
Well, as you know, I love playing in Canva. I call it finger paint for grown-ups, right? And so I have created several carousels, but I'm very much wanting to improve my brand, and I want to get it to a level of professionalism that exceeds my ability. And so until I engage a graphic artist, and I do have somebody, we're working together, I'm not going to be posting any more carousels that aren't professionally done. And because I know, and I know mine are decent and they're funny, but any little mistake, and I want them to look more professional, right? And also too, they're a big time suck. So someone else, I could pay them, a small, 25, $60 or $25 to $60. They can do the carousel for me and save me like 4 hours, right? So I'm going to go ahead and spend that money because I think that 3 to 4 hours is much better used for me reaching out to clients, writing content, that kind of thing. But I do believe a well-prepared carousel with a good message, it's not only needs to look good, you need to have, again, content of value. And the one great thing about a carousel, if you are providing value and people save it, save the post in their LinkedIn saved post tab, then the algorithm looks at that as a favorable event and you'll get more consideration for impressions.
Awesome. Listen,
And
we
go ahead.
sorry, we have a few questions from our audience members that I'd like to jump into.
Okay.
But I think I interrupted you, so I'll let you finish up.
Oh, actually, that was just about it. So,
All right.
because
I apologize.
I remember, you can pack a lot more information into a carousel than a single image graphic, right?
Yes. So the carousel that I posted most recently, or the last two, were text only, and I left graphics to a minimal, and it worked. What I tried in the past had more graphics, and it didn't resonate. So I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. You know what? If something bombs or something fails, despite following best practices, hey, best practices change and evolve. And so should your content and your strategy. Be ready to pivot, be ready to change as things change within the landscape that or ecosystem that you find yourself in. So Annie's asking, is it me or more and more people doing long posts that feel more like AI blogs? Would you advise longer or shorter posts?
That's another great question. I'm a fan of, again, readability, right? And most people scan their LinkedIn, right? And so I will say some creators can get away with longer posts because these are what I call writers, right? In other words, they're professional writers that write very good copy. They have an established audience and they seem to be doing pretty well with the longer posts, right? Now, this is for me. I try to keep my posts on the shorter side, under 1,100 characters, 750 to 1,100 characters. And if I ever get back to a place where I'm wanting to write longer content, then I'll probably start doing articles.
Well, I hope that answers the question, Annie. I get what you're saying, and it's a great segue because I was going to ask this question at the end of where Shelley sits Are you a yay or nay when it comes to footer? Because I feel that the footer brings value. It's a great place to put a call to action, but it's a great place to kind of drag out what might be already a long post.
I have not been doing footers in my main post. I have read in more than one place that the algorithm does punish direct CTAs for engagement or follows or customer, for clients, right? And so my footer is now, more just, I have my call to action with a, question, and then my more overt, where I'm reaching out to the audience and say, hey, I'm Shelley. I do LinkedIn coaching for professionals. I'm putting that in pinned comments. And the same thing for our LinkedIn lives, right? I put those in the pinned comments. But I no longer ask people implicitly to engage. I'll ask them a question, right? And so if they want to answer the question, obviously, I'm leading them to comment, but I'm not overtly saying, hey, like or share or comment. I don't say that anymore. And I do think that changing that practice is part of what's helped my impressions.
Excellent. All right. So, yay on the footer, but nay on too much self-promoting and advocating for connections or solicitation.
And if I can add one more thing,
Yes.
something that has worked for me is because even though I advocate shortish posts, I tend to talk a lot, right? And so if I have a post that's running too long and there's some points that are very important to me that I want to include, I've been just snippeting them out of my main post and including those points down in my pinned comments. So if anyone wants to nerd out with me and read the more detailed information that I'm providing, great, I have it there for them, but it's not in the main post for the people that skim. The algorithm won't punish me for having too many characters, and it's a win-win.
Awesome. All right, before we move on to Dwayne's question, we want to say hello and welcome Professor Roxana and Paige Hansen. Thank you for joining us Paige is joining us from Arizona. Professor Roxana says good evening, and unless I jump into her profile off of memory, I don't know where she is currently sitting, but welcome both of you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let's move on to Dwayne's question. Dwayne is currently driving, so I like the whole sound of that he's being safe. He's at a red light. He's asking the question, but the fact that we're being listened to on someone's drive home or someone's drive to work is just, I'm over the moon learning this. So thanks, Dwayne. His question: how important or relevant are recommendations on LinkedIn, and can they help? So, great question.
Yes.
I have my thoughts on it. Shell, what are your thoughts on recommendations?
So it's going to depend, right? So I do have some recommendations from my mortgage days, right? But that's not going to do me any good for today. And so, in other words, I think they're good, and I think that they can enhance your profile. But I don't know how necessary they are. Now, if you're a wage earner and you have a job, I think they'd be great if they were related to your employment, your experience, especially from a previous employer. If you are an entrepreneur or you're pivoting a little bit and you're in that in-between phase where you were the executive, but now you're trying to launch your business, I don't know how much that's going to help you right now. If you can get 10 people recommending you for your business, right, for the work you've done for them, I think they're great. But I have not solicited recommendations and not in a while.
All right, excellent. Here's my take on recommendations. They won't help your post. They won't help your posting, helping you gain authority when it comes to posting. However, my My thought and my recommendation is, do they help? Yes, they help professionally. So whether you're, a wage earner, you're a W-2, 1099 in the US, or you're just a full-time contract employee here in Canada, uh, they work. But I do caution people, don't just solicit people and badger them to give you a recommendation. Make sure that you know them well enough and you've earned and gained their trust. We hear about the like, know, and trust factor when it comes to building a business and being successful. No different when it comes to recommendations. Like, know, and trust. And those who like, know, and trust you will do it unsolicited. Those who you'd like to hear from, yeah, you ask them. If they agree and don't write anything, just leave it at that. Also, be sure to be reciprocal. Don't just ask for recommendations if you're not prepared to give recommendations. My best practice and what I suggest is to keep at least, and it doesn't have to be an exorbitant amount of recommendations. Just even if it's one a year, if you receive one a year, be sure to give one back. It doesn't necessarily have to be to the same person who it's not tit for tat. It's not necessarily the person who gave you one. If you find value and there's a place and you can add value to someone's profile, highly recommend that you offer the recommendation. All right. Now, LinkedIn articles. You touched on LinkedIn articles. I'm big on the newsletter, big on the articles as well. I will kick it off by saying, if you have a newsletter, listen, there's so many benefits that come out of a newsletter. Just the whole uh, bots and the whole web crawling piece. It helps optimize for SEO. If you have the right keywords, it'll get picked up outside of LinkedIn, and your articles and your newsletter will pop up on web searches. However, my thoughts, and this isn't right or wrong, if you're posting too frequently, yeah, you might lose your audience, and you might just come off as being spammy. I started my newsletter on a weekly basis because I thought it was the right thing to do, but I quickly learned, like, who's got time now. As my community is growing and I'm getting invited to subscribe to other people's newsletters, I'm recognizing really quickly that if you're publishing a newsletter once a week, and like, there just isn't enough time to engage in all these newsletters that we're subscribing to. So I've whittled it back. And you know what? As I scale, I might have to reconsider and just make it a monthly newsletter. But for now, I say the sweet spot is bi-weekly. If you're into the newsletters, you might find that monthly is going to work better for you. But please, and this is my advice, do what you want with it. My advice is stay away from daily newsletters and stay away from weekly newsletters.
I would support that because I get a lot of newsletters, and I'm my inbox is my inbox overfloweth, so I don't read them all.
Yep. And moving on to document posts. Hey, I thought I was doing a great job at one point, taking someone's post, whether it was a study of some sort or a white paper from an organization that I'm following or a publication that I subscribe to, and sharing it with my thoughts. It did very little for me, and in terms of gaining authority for myself, it does a lot in supporting the organization in which you're reposting or sharing the documents that were published. I find that if you kind of take it back to a text-only post and talk about the document that you read and provide the source. Hey, came across this interesting article published by XYZ company or XYZ author. Here's what I took away from it. Does much better than resharing the actual publication. You find that similar with you, Shell?
Yeah, because you're right. So when you share someone else's post or case study, it's not your own post that you wrote yourself. It's never going to get the same amount of impressions, right? And so what I have now, when I first started, I reposted a lot of other people's posts, and I also would post an article very similar to what you're talking about, case studies and data and that kind of thing. But none of those posts did well, and I learned, and since then, that the algorithm does give favoritism to content that is native and that we create ourselves. Now, if you're first starting and you're afraid to post, and a lot of the gurus would disagree with me, but for someone that is really feeling that shyness, like, who wants to listen to what I have to say, etc. I do think it's good. It's like putting on your floaties, right? It's good to get, find a post that resonates with you, then add your thoughts. The post has already done well because people have engaged. So, it's not a dumb idea. It's something people are interested in, and you can, piggyback off that. But I would not recommend that for very long, but I do think it's a good way to, get over that fear, right?
Excellent. All right. So I changed this screen format, and the last one that was hidden behind our chat is this exact format. People post videos, people post live. Live events are growing and are a great way to not only earn that trust and gain authority with your audience and your community, but these events are also great for repurposing content, right? We're going to learn things from one another, and comments that are shared, we're going to learn what really resonates with our audience. And we now have an opportunity to repurpose or come up with creative ideas that arose from some of the comments. I really love the fact that I made a commitment to myself to be present, whether it's in audible format or in live on cameras setting. I think it's by far one of the best ways and excellent strategies to incorporate for anyone, whether you're a professional, whether you're a business owner. It's no secret. It's what social media platforms thrive off. They are prioritizing live, and they are prioritizing videos, and the whole format is up in the air. We all know, based on what we read, that portrait or 9:16 aspect ratio is what the platforms are favoring. But when you kind of look at the numbers, it's about a 50-50 split. Half people still consume content on landscape or 16:9, and the others prefer 9:16. And I would say that 50 percentile is from mobile users, right? Because our mobile devices are in portrait mode. So
Yes, the landscape doesn't work on a mobile, especially for those of us that need big girl or big boy glasses. So
yeah, yeah. Well, here's a
that.
great example. I couldn't read what's on this screen currently, but all right. So great conversation thus far. I know we're at 15 minutes to, and you have a hard stop. So
Can
we're
I
gonna
comment on the videos real quick?
absolutely.
There's one important piece of videos besides, we all know that LinkedIn is promoting them. We know it's the wave of the future, and if we want to optimize our success, we got to get with it. But there's one advantage beyond that to us as LinkedIn content creators. So remember when you were growing up and your favorite TV show, maybe you watched it in reruns every night, or maybe you watched the news with your parents, and whether it's a certain celebrity, actor, character, newscaster, you see them night after night, you feel like you know them a little bit, right? Like for me, it was, the Walter Cronkites and the Katie Courics and Bill Cosby and the cartoons and those things. And so even though you don't know them, people are acting, right? And that's why acting's called acting. They're not being themselves, but you have this sense of familiarity. And actually, the name of it escapes me, but there is a name for that. It's a thing, right? The same element applies when we are posting videos, right? There's several creators on the platform. I feel like I know them a little bit. I've never talked to them because I've been watching their videos, right? I know I would recognize their voice. I know they speak with intelligence and that they project well, and I can see their body motions and the when they emphasize something. I look at my own videos a couple days after I post it, and I'm like, "Whoa, Shelley, you're moving around." But I'm doing it, and I know I'm doing it because that particular point is something I'm passionate about, right? That I'm really wanting to underscore it. So when you're making videos, so number one, people can hear your passion and they can really feel your enthusiasm about a certain topic. But number two, even more important to us as creators, they're getting to know us. And people buy who they're familiar with, or they buy from who they're familiar with, where they feel that trust. Right. And so for me, videos are the best and the most optimal media for us to build that trust, because people can see the real us through video.
Absolutely. And you nailed it. And I think it's covered here. Visual content. So we're looking at social media engagement strategies, and they're no different when it comes to marketing a business, a product or service, or just marketing our own personal brands. It's the same ideology, it's the same strategies that are being applied here. LinkedIn is by far, I would say, the biggest social media marketing asset for anyone, whether you're a job seeker, whether you're just an independent professional, whether you have a corporate 9-to-5 job. Listen, your customers are here. If you're a business-to-business professional, other businesses are here. Why wouldn't you want to bring your best self forward? And, visual content, like what we're portraying here, is instrumental and vital for a successful strategy, or part of a successful strategy.
I agree.
You talked about, you called it a hook. I wrote headline, but essentially that's what I meant. Headline is technically found elsewhere in the LinkedIn profile, so that's a typo on my end. But your hook, if you can't grab someone's attention or pique someone's curiosity to go past that first line, then all your sweat equity is lost. And it takes practice. I continue to try and dabble in different areas to see what works and what doesn't. And I said it once before, and I'll continue to say there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not crossing your arms and relying on hope as being your only strategy. All right, I hope this is going to be different. I hope people are going to come on and they're going to like it. If it doesn't work, learn and try something else. Mobile optimization. Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. If you're producing a piece of content, be aware, be cognizant of the fact that half of your audience might be consuming that piece of content on a mobile device. And it's sometimes I forget, and I had one of my community members reach out to me and say, hey, and it was a carousel at the time, love the carousel, but I just a heads up, you're only broadcasting to a desktop community member, because if I open this on mobile, I can't read it to save my life. So it's important to be aware of how things look on multiple platforms.
I agree.
Peak posting. Hey, I'm learning. I was posting and continue to post and schedule 8 a.m. Most of my content goes out, but I'm finding that 8 a.m. just isn't working as well as it once was. So am I going to cross my arms and say, nope, I'm digging my heels, 8 a.m. it is, like it or hate it, that's where I'm showing up? No, it'd be foolish of me to do that, because if my audience is consuming content at different times or in different formats, it's important that I understand that and find, and it might be trial and error. Tomorrow I'll change it to 9 o'clock and run 9 o'clock for a week and see if that picks up. Or if you Google what's the optimal time, there are large enterprises marketing companies that will share what is best. But take it with a grain of salt. If an organization out in Silicon Valley suggests, hey, best time is 12 o'clock, but is it Pacific? Is it Central? Is it Mountain? Is it Eastern? You kind of got to test it out yourself, right?
It depends upon your audience, right? So if my audience was rock and roll music producers, 6 o'clock in the morning probably wouldn't be it, right? Right. And so it depends. So, for a while I was going after CEOs and senior executives. And so I was posting at roughly, and plus I was working at that time, right? So I was posting at 5 a.m. Pacific time, hoping to catch the CEOs on the, that were still active on the platform, back east. And then the people, in the West Coast, California, were just waking up. And I did experience, some good activity and impressions. But as you know, I'm tweaking my schedule a little bit and trying to find a sweet spot. So that's going to change a little bit.
Awesome. So we have our friend Annie. He agrees that 100% videos being most engaging. He rarely posts now. And if you don't have videos these days, guess what? You're missing out. And our friend Dwayne is feeding families currently, working Uber Eats, and we're keeping him company. And he wants to thank us for answering his question and presenting a great session. Well, thank you, Dwayne. Glad to help you. And please don't let those orders go cold on our account. Hey, providing value and engaging with the audience. These are our last two in terms of engagement strategies. You have done this, I would say, better than I have. 8 a.m., engaging for an entire hour from 8 till 9. Not ideal for me because I have other priorities that need my attention during that time, which is probably a good reason for me to shift and change my posting times.
No judgment.
No, hey, that's fine.
I'm playing.
But most importantly, you can engage all you want with your audience, but if you're not bringing value, your audience isn't going to show up, right?
Yeah.
Even if it is the ideal posting time, even if it is optimized for mobile, even if your content and your headline and your hooks, you can have all your ducks lined up, but if there's no value, there's just no point in waiting for that audience to show up because they just might not.
No, there more than one time I quit engaging with creators because I would comment within the first hour and then they would never respond. Like one creator, and he's everybody in mortgage knows him. You guys probably wouldn't, and I wouldn't mention his name anyway. But I commented, and it was a solid, supportive comment that added value. And not only did he not like it, he didn't comment. He went back to my page. He looked at my profile, right? So I know he saw it, but he didn't engage. And it wasn't just me. He just doesn't engage. Like he thinks he's Gary V or something. I don't know. But I quit supporting it. And I get 10 times the engagement he does. But he has 5 times the network I do, or follower count. So and he's got other things going on. Maybe engagement's not important to him. But if you're wanting to grow an audience that is loyal, that feels like they know you, you need to get out in the comment section with them for, in my view, at least an hour after you post. Like today, my post didn't do that well, so I only had a handful of comments. And I did curl my hair for our session tonight, so I wasn't on the computer the whole time on LinkedIn. But I did, I answered all my comments from the first hour.
No, here's something else. I know my brother tells me all the time. It's like, dude, every time I open my phone, there you are. It's like not everyone's a LinkedIn nerd, like I might be. I'm here more frequently because this is where I conduct my outreach. This is where I spend most of my time with prospective clients, and this is where I bring most of my value. So yes, I'm going to be here more frequently than others, as are other professionals who uh, leverage and understand the value and the strength that this platform provides. You know, I know we're winding down, so why don't we move on to the next or our last slide, which it talks about best practices from a digital marketing perspective. But like I touched on earlier, your LinkedIn profile is no different than a website. It's a landing page. It's a marketing tool for job seekers, even students, independent professionals, and business owners. So you got to treat your profile like you would any other marketing campaign. You're here to market yourself. You're here to market the value that you bring, and you're here to be seen, heard, and remembered, because there are HR professionals that I am connected with who are now saying, some will say 70, some will even say higher than that, but over 70% of jobs, if you're a job seeker, over 70% of jobs are being filled by people who never applied for them. So it just stresses the importance of networking. It stresses the importance of social selling, storytelling. You got to be present here on this platform, because there are people looking, there are people lurking, and they will find what they believe is a diamond in the rough, and they'll reach out and say, hey, I know you're not open to work, or I know you're open to work. Have you taken a look at this opportunity? Or it could be, hey, I came across a piece of your content. I found it to be extremely valuable. I'd like to talk.
Forgive me, Americo. Forgive me for cutting you off.
Yep.
I do have a hard stop. It's 5.
All right. So are we at?
And I'm so sorry.
No worries. All right, Shelley. Thank you very much. Would you like to share just before you shut off?
I gotta go.
Okay.
I'll let you sign off.
I will do it for you. I will do it for you.
Thank you. Okay. I appreciate you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. All right. So we're just going to wrap up here. John, I know you've been sitting in the wings here. You're on stage. If you'd like to help me with closing remarks, feel free to jump in.
Hi.
There.
I don't know really what to say. I think you guys did a really good job with your discussion, and the points that you brought up are very valid. And I look forward to hearing more from you guys. Like I said, I'm just getting started at trying to get some of this stuff established, and I hope to learn and start moving forward in a good direction here.
Fantastic. Appreciate the feedback. Always welcome on our show. And I do also recognize that, hey, you're here to learn, as is the rest of the audience, whether they're here live or watching the replay, hoping that we bring some value that will help individuals be seen, heard, and remembered.
I think the first one, I think that I was here, you guys were the ones talking about the lurkers.
Yes,
right?
We were talking about the lurkers. Yeah, absolutely.
Got me on the hook there.
Well, glad we've converted you from a lurker to a participant. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to really take a moment to thank each and every one of you for showing up and participating in today's conversation on LinkedIn literacy. In the next 2 weeks, we have a fantastic lineup, another great show lined up. Gwen Wilcox, who was scheduled to guest speak with us about a month ago, is now being rescheduled, and she will join us in 2 weeks' time. Gwen is a personal brand specialist, and I'm looking forward to bringing her back to the show. I look forward to having each and every one of you join us at that point. But for now, I want to say goodbye, and until next time. Thank you, everyone.